So can you imagine how joyous your investor would be having an equity position on those types of deals?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for them too, because we're taking the ride together. And typically I got, not a whole lot of my own money into the deals. I've got all my knowledge and experience. That's what we get paid for. But I want them to make their money and make more money. And
Yeah.
they're never going to want to leave. And I
Right.
don't want them to. Welcome to the Generations of Wealth podcast. I am your host, Derek Dombeck. And once again, we have an incredible guest. Brandon Richards, he comes to us from Flagstaff, Arizona at this point. He's got a lot of experience in multiple different avenues of real estate investing. And what I really also enjoyed was we talk about their nonprofit organization that is helping people in Nigeria and Peru. You'll hear all about it. Before I bring Brandon on, again, I always like to take a second to thank you for following us, for listening, doing anything you can to help spread the word about the Generations of Wealth podcast and just our platform in general. And, if there's anything I can do to help you, don't hesitate. Just, you can go to our website, of course, thegenerationswealth.com. You can go to derekdombeck.com. But straight up, you can just send me an email, Derek at globalgow.com, and let me see what I can do to help you. So, all that is behind us. What's in front of us is an incredible show with Brandon Richards. And here we go. So, with no further ado, Mr. Brandon Richards, thank you so much for being on the Generations of Wealth podcast. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm doing real good. Thanks for inviting me on.
Absolutely. Man, you've got a lot of really cool things, and we were talking before we started recording a little bit, but to start with, just tell everybody about yourself, your background, and then we'll just dive into our conversation.
Sure. My wife and I, and well, my girls, we live here in Flagstaff, Arizona. We moved here about 5 years ago. We're 10 years into our real estate journey. Everything from, I started out as a realtor. I thought that was the way to go into the investment space, but I quickly learned that most realtors got zero idea about the investment space. Got lucky, was introduced to an investment um, based brokerage where I was a realtor at. So I got to see firsthand kind of the ins and outs of wholesaling and some other types of investments. Um, I started doing our first wholesales, then our first flips, and then we started buying apartments, storage. We created some notes on mobile homes, and our main focus right now is primarily land. After owning a bunch of rentals, I don't like the random calls when I'm not expecting them, or if I'm on vacation and I'm just like constantly thinking about when that next dreadful call is going to come. So um, I had heard about notes for years and years and years, and so why not mix the easiest, to me anyways, the easiest asset class of real estate investments, land, with notes. And so now we just buy a bunch of land and we sell them to retail buyers on notes.
Love it. Absolutely love it. We'll dive into that for sure.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I was always afraid of notes when I started 20 plus years ago. And then ultimately, my listeners know I co-owned a hard money lending company for 10 years with a partner. And so very familiar with notes at this point
Mhm.
because we were originating a lot of them.
Yeah.
But, I think a lot of people overthink notes. They really, um, to me, it's yes, there's things you need to know, but it's a very simple business,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
Um,
Same deal. I mean, yeah, I was a little apprehensive when I was first starting to learn about notes. I knew, I was like, man, these guys seem like they have figured out the perfect niche, but it took me years and years and years to finally dig into it because, like you said, it just seems complicated, but in reality, it's not.
well, and let's talk about the differences, right? So you can originate notes and hold them,
Yep.
through the time period that the note is set up for. You can buy existing performing notes. You can buy existing non-performing notes. You can sell partials. So there's a lot of different things. I'm assuming that you're originating new notes and then holding them, or are you selling them off?
We're holding them. So yeah, we're originators. And sometimes we'll pay cash for the property and we will, be the bank at that point. And sometimes we do wraps with our private lenders as well. But we do keep them all in-house.
Okay, so a lot of us that listen to this show know what wraps are, but of course there's people that don't.
Mhm.
So let's just maybe walk through a deal. You buy a piece of land, you've got the acquisition side, you've got the disposition side, and you're going to wrap it. Kind of walk through the whole thing.
Sure. I'll just talk about my last one. We bought 40 acres out here in Arizona for 15,000. My private lender put that $15,000 down, and we marketed that on Facebook in the MLS. Eventually found a buyer off of Facebook, sold that for $43,000 to him. So we took that underlying $15,000 note, and wrapping is the only term that's known, but we wrap that note with another note with a disclosure document provided to the buyers, and of course title wanted that, and so we took the 15, wrapped it, arbitraged that amount to the 43, and then amortized that. I think that's a 12-year note, so we'll receive. I'd have to pull up the details, but we'll receive somewhere around $516 net proceeds for 10 or 12 years. But anyways, you get the idea. We've got no money into it. My team found the property, my VAs, and then the second we got a contract on there, I reached out to my lenders, created the private financing note, closed on it, and then did the wrap process we discussed.
Perfect. So I've been raising private money for well over a decade as well. That's how we funded our hard money lending company. So I
Yep.
don't love institutions. I don't have anything against institutions,
Mm,
but I just don't use them. I don't like them.
right.
Everybody that listens to my show, it's they know that about me. Um, so private money, you're bringing them in. Why would they want to put up all the money on this $15,000 deal? I mean, I'm asking these questions. I I I know the answers, but for
Yeah.
everybody else, right? Why would they want to put up all the money? What's their security? What happens if, the whole deal falls apart? All these things that, again, we're kind of breaking this down for people that are afraid of notes.
Yeah. I mean, there's a dozens of pros, and I'm sure there's some cons for a lender. I mean, there's always risk of default, but for me, just like you, I don't go to the banks. I've never once used a bank for any type of real estate transaction outside of my personal home mortgage. And so I'm able to provide typically a double-digit return on to my investors. And most of the time, these investors don't use the money they have in their checking or their savings account. It's coming out of their IRA, the 401k, some sort of retirement savings plan, and they're able to set that in and with the promissory note and deed of trust, and so they got the security there. But also, if we're speaking about land, we're buying land somewhere between 40 and 60% of today's market value,
Mhm.
and then I only buy in areas where the trajectory is always increasing. Versus, there's areas like I saw a post on Facebook the other day where they bought 180 acres for $5,000. Well, I'm not going to buy in that area because clearly there's something driving those numbers way down. So the areas we buy in are continually increasing. And so they're secured, the private investors is secured by a promissory note deed trust with that substantial amount of equity. And so if I ever default, they get the property, or if my end buyer ever defaults, I get the property back as the lien holder in this case.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm actually working on a project right now, and this is something we've done in the past, but we're looking to grow it. And that's putting options on land.
Yeah.
and and very similar, but not necessarily having to put up as much money.
Mhm.
Um, Typically, we can option land for 5 to 10 cents on a dollar, and the nice thing with that is the owners don't give up the use of the land right away. So if they still want to use it for years to come. We might have a 10-year option on a piece of property that's in the path of growth, but we don't want to sit on the debt and the expense until the growth hits us. And we don't really want to sell it to somebody else, right? We want it for the growth. Then using options is a great tool.
Yeah.
So, but
I mean,
you
that's an awesome strategy as long as you know where the growth is going. Or I guess anywhere really. I mean, if you're in a desirable area, why not hang on to that option as long as you can and be there when they're ready to go?
Well, yeah, so I'll give you an example. If the growth doesn't get there, right? So if I'm, let's say land is worth $10,000 an acre where I'm buying it and I'm getting an option for $1,000 an acre and my price is full retail as of today's market,
Mhm.
but I've got a 10-year option on it. If the growth doesn't get to me by the end of my 10 years, the odds are that land is still worth more than the $100,000 strike price 10 years from now, just from inflation, right?
Yep.
So, but I don't have to buy that land. My worst case scenario is I'm out $10,000 if I don't exercise the option, like if the market's tanked and
Right.
it went down. But that option is currency. I can sell that option, I can trade that option, I can renegotiate that option with the owners at any point in time. And
Mhm.
that's what I like about it. Um, but I like your model because you're not necessarily trying to hold land long term. You're flipping it, but flipping it on using paper.
Right.
So it's similar, but we're looking at 5 and 10 year plans that the counties and cities put out, trying to get ahead of growth and
Yeah.
that type of stuff. Which will lead me to my next question. You know, I know you buy land in a couple different states, at least, maybe even three or four.
Mhm.
Um, what are you looking for? We know you're not looking for the areas that are stagnant, but you've got VAs, I believe, that kind of do this research for you.
Right.
What's their standard operating procedure for looking for land?
Well, we focus on three what do you call it, niches or yeah, I'll just call it niches. So our main strategy is I like what I consider let's say recreational land. It's not zoned recreational, it's zoned residential or some form of residential, whether it's R110 or 40 acres or whatever it is. But my goal is to never be paid off. And so I want to be in an area where a family wants to do staycations or weekend trips or whatever. And so I'm thinking um, national parks, lakes, so if you are familiar with, say, the Phoenix area, you've got Phoenix Metro, the Valley, you're not going to vacation in Phoenix unless you're staying in an air conditioned hotel. And so you're looking for a cool place to go. And so where do you go? You head into the mountains, the higher mountains, higher elevation. For example, up here in Flagstaff, we've got the Grand Canyon. We've got about a dozen lakes up here above the Mogollon Rim. There's all of these staycation type areas where people would want to drag their RV, pop a tent, whatever the case may be. And so we want to be in those areas where they don't want to or can't build a house because, this is their this is the money they've been saving up for 5 years for that vacation. And so they'll give me a down payment and they make payments to me. And now they utilize the property to park their RV for the weekend to get out of the heat of the summer. And so when I branch into a new area, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for national parks and lakes. That's what a lot of people do. And so when we went into Utah, I found all of the lakes that people like to visit, and we started looking at land around there within. And it depends because we'll look at Realtor and Zillow.com and see kind of what's moving quickly, and we'll base it off of that. But it ends up being typically 1 to 5 acres in most areas, and so we'll buy within a radius of, let's say, 5 miles of that area, unless something stands out that's pretty obvious where I don't want to be there. So when we moved into Alaska market, I knew that what's Alaska known for? Well, it's glaciers, fishing, and hunting. And so I wanted to be around all the hunting land, all the fishing land, and the coastal regions. So I created a Loom video and I showed my VA on the county GIS map. I was like, I want every single parcel in this area mapped, put into an Excel, back into our CRM, and we're going to call that list until it's done. And we're going to call it every 3 weeks until, people start to tell us to kick rocks. So anyways, that's our model. I look for stuff where people don't want to sell it, or sorry, yeah, don't want to pay us off early because they don't need to go. And what I mean by that is if somebody wants to build a house, the bank isn't going to go be subordinate in a second lien position. So
Yeah.
they need to be first, which means they need to pay me off. I don't want that to happen. So that's what I like to do because I can create longer term notes and I don't have to worry about payoffs. I also wholesale infill development lands to developers. That's pretty easy peasy. We just pick neighborhoods, find the builders in that area, and we wholesale to those builders.
Mhm.
And then we do a little bit of subdividing. And so we'll just look for larger parcels that have the proper zoning with access and utilities. We'll buy it, parcel it, and sell off the parcels.
I love all of that,
Mhm.
and I've dabbled in all of that, just not to scale. So I'm very familiar with what you're talking about. I love it. Um, let's go to the disposition side. You're using your private money on the front end. I know you're paying your investors double digits. That I understand completely. Now on the resale side, do you have usury laws you have to watch out for in the states that you're doing business? How are you setting up their interest, and and what I do really love about this is I don't believe that this is affected by Dodd-Frank laws because you're not lending or selling residential properties on terms. So speak to some of that.
Mhm. Sorry. Um, so just for reference, all of our notes and promissory notes and deeds of trust, they're all drafted by the title companies,
Mhm.
unless I have a well-seasoned investor that wants to provide notes, and so we'll do it that way. But I don't worry about usury laws per se because I typically sell at between 9.5% and 10.5%, and it's honestly just flavor of the day. It's probably for me, it is my spread between purchase and disposition, and so and to be frank, most of my lenders are getting more interest than I'm getting from my end buyers. But my difference between the two notes is how I arbitrage the difference and how I'm able to capitalize, even though I'm paying my investors more money on
Mhm.
the smaller debt versus my end buyers paying me a smaller interest on the bigger um, dollar amount. Um, as far as Dodd-Frank, you're right. Yeah, in land, it's a little bit different. Once we start to get at scale, I'm sure I'll get an NMLS mortgage originator to start drafting those. But at this point, it's easy enough. Like I said, our title company is always drafting those notes, and then as far as servicing, we just push them into. There's a self-servicing platform called Your Land Loans, which just changed to Terra Notes. I think they just changed their name to, but it's super easy. You throw it in there, and your end buyers will set up an account with their bank checking, credit card, whatever they want to use to pay, and we just get notifications first of the month when they pay, and it's been super easy.
And your foreclosure laws in the states that you're working, are they all deed of trust states, or are some mortgage states and some deed of trust?
These are deed of trust.
Okay.
Yeah,
So the difference for the audience is, you have a non-judicial process
right.
typically in deed of trust states versus a judicial foreclosure process where I live. Um, and that's a big thing to consider because how long, if somebody does default on their land loan, how long would it take you to foreclose and get them out of there and get your property back?
Depends on the state, but typically 15 to 45 days tops.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like in Wisconsin, it's 9 to 15 months.
Jeez Louise.
So I bring that up so everybody listening to this is like, hey, I love what Brandon's doing. I'm going to go buy land. Absolutely. Nothing wrong with it. You should, consider it. but know your foreclosure laws,
Yeah.
because the nice thing is with the land, they're not going to trash the land, maybe like they could a house during a
Hmm.
foreclosure.
Right.
But if it's timberland and they go nuts with a chainsaw and start cutting everything down, or they start dumping toxic waste, or fill in the blank,
Mhm.
yeah, it can still cause you a lot of brain damage, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and frankly, I haven't had to deal with foreclosure yet. We had a note that was not performing well back in Texas, and we did some loan modifications a couple times for her. And eventually, I just said, hey, either we need to do basically cash or keys, like I'm going to foreclose, or just give me the house back, or you need to go talk to a realtor and get this thing sold.
Mhm.
And so ultimately, she decided to go the realtor route. Couldn't get it sold, so I was like, okay, let me help you. I'll find us a buyer. I went to my network back in Texas, found an investor that wanted to buy it, and he was able to get her out of that note, get me paid off, get my lender paid off. But I prefer not to foreclose, obviously. But the nice part about that is obviously we're all getting down payments. So if they default, cool, yeah, we're missing a little bit of payments. If we own the property in cash, or if we have a lender, then we're paying a nominal amount, but we collect their down payment. So we're keeping, whether it's $5,000 or $50,000, that's ours to keep if they decide to default. And so the higher that down payment, in my mind, in most investors' mind, they're less likely to default. And so that's a little bit extra security there as well.
Yeah, I mean, you never want somebody to default, but you gotta be in position to carry it as well, because you still have to pay your investors on the
Yeah.
wrap.
Right.
Um, Now that's another avenue that you could consider too with the investors, depending who they are. If if you set them up more on a performing standpoint, where meaning while the property is on the market originally, waiting for a buyer, and or if there's a default, um, maybe the investor doesn't get paid. But
Mhm.
what I do often is participating notes with my investors. Are you familiar with those, Brandon?
No, I don't, not actually.
Okay. So I go buy a house and I need $50,000 rehab money. And I've got a friend that's got an IRA sitting around. Um, and I'm assuming you're just like I am. We're very nosy with what our friends have, and we want to keep their money working. So I'll often go and give them maybe 6% interest only payments on that 50 grand quarterly,
Hmm.
but I'll give them a percentage of the net profit when that property sells in the future.
Hmm.
So, and that percentage, that's just deal by deal dependent, right? But we're
Right.
we're getting them double digit returns.
Yeah.
The nice thing is it's not costing me a lot on the front end, and typically I'm doing this with a rental property that I'm going to lease option out, and my
Yeah.
lease options are 1 to 3 years.
Hmm.
So the investor is on a 1 to 3 year plan on getting paid out. But if I give them 6% interest only, I'm able to cash flow the property in the Midwest, and I'm paying them with future dollars when we do the equity split on the back end,
Yeah.
which theoretically is worth less money than it is today because of inflation. So it's win-win for everybody. And if it's their IRA, they don't necessarily want the payments coming back. They want to keep the money working.
Right.
So
Well, that's a great way to keep your, it's what I call the monthly nut. If you got a whole boatload of notes out that
mhm.
you're making payments on, like when I was heavy into flipping, dude, sometimes my monthly payments were $20,000, $30,000. I'm like, golly, I wish there was a way to alleviate this. And then I got wise to the whole situation, and now I put payments on the end when I sell those flips now. But in the beginning, I was like, good Lord. And so to your point, getting the investor knows they're still getting their double digit, it's just a smidger delayed. They don't care because it's sitting in a retirement account anyways, but they get to see that every quarter they're getting their 6%. And so, like you said, it was a win-win-win. I mean, you get to reduce your monthly nut, relieving tons of stress, and then having to, or still providing that double-digit return.
Well,
The best negotiators don't just respond to objections, they dismantle them before they ever come up. Inside Elite Negotiations Academy, you'll learn how to spot concerns early, address them with confidence, and keep conversations moving toward a yes without pressure or games. We walk through real negotiations, real objections, and real outcomes, so you know exactly what to say and why it works. It's not about slick sales tactics. It's about understanding people, earning trust, and leading the conversation. Join now for just $49 per month for your first 3 months at EliteNegotiationsAcademy.com. Because the best way to overcome objections is to never give them a chance to grow.
Well, and I can tell you about one that we're literally doing as we speak. I mean, this is your show. I shouldn't be taking it over from you, but
Oh, good.
now we're going back and forth. So we bought a house seller financed
Hmm.
in February, and 100%, or not 100% seller finance. We had to give them $25,000 down, but they are doing 0% interest for 8 years, and we needed to bring 40,000 to the deal, 25,000 down to the sellers, $15,000 to make it rent ready.
Yeah.
And so that's a deal where I brought in a private investor, gave him 6% quarterly, and he's getting 15% of the net profit when the property sells in the future.
Hmm.
Now he's aware that could go out 8 years. We have an 8-year balloon with the seller.
Yep.
I love doing those types of deals because everything with the seller is 100% principal reduction every month,
Yeah.
you know. And we do that in a way where they wanted full retail for the house. Most of the people that you and I talk to, like, we all buy at discounts. I'll buy full retail if I get my terms.
Right.
So I just said to him, I said, I got to be able to cash flow this property. I can't pay more than 45% of the rents that I'm going to collect in a debt payment. That's $800 a month. So we bought a $260,000 house for $800 a month. If you put that into a mortgage calculator, that's you know, at today's bank rates, that mortgage should be about 1,700.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, so what do? We can then put somebody in on a wrap or a lease option. We use lease options because of our foreclosure laws. Um, and we can put them in at bank rates and make
Right.
the spread,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
shoot, if you're getting 0%, I mean, that's the very definition of arbitrage right there. I mean, that's how you
Exactly.
cash flow, a property like that. And which is why a lot of people run into the sub two business, which I don't know a whole lot of anything about, but that's in a
Yeah,
sense similar.
I do know a lot about it. I do it, but there's also a lot of misinformation out there.
Right.
We
Yeah.
we won't dive into that one today, um, but the point is, you can do things with participating notes to still get everybody what they want, but there is some risk that's taken away from you as the operator and put onto the investor, but you're also potentially giving the investor more, right? So with the equity participation, what if the market tanks? What if you don't sell that land for what you thought you would sell it for? Well, they get less. However, what if it sells for more?
Hmm.
In my case, some of these houses don't sell for several years. And if we all of a sudden get 10, 20% appreciation for a couple years in a row, well, great. We all made more money,
Right.
you know? So that's the risk versus reward.
Yeah. As was, I was thinking as you were saying that, a lot of areas are pretty stagnant. Some are dropping. Most are appreciating.
Hmm.
When I first moved out here to Flagstaff about 5 years ago, my buddy was building houses and selling them for like the mid 300s. That exact same neighborhood just 5 years later is selling in the mid 700s in 5 years. So
Hmm.
can you imagine how joyous your investor would be having an equity position on those types of deals?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for them too, because we're taking the ride together. And typically I got, not a whole lot of my own money into the deals. I've got all my knowledge and experience. That's what we get paid for. But I want them to make their money and make more money. And
Yeah.
they're never going to want to leave. And I
Right.
don't want them to. No.
Right. I mean, that's why they always keep picking the phone because we make it easy and we pay them every
Yep.
single day. And
Yep.
so, and one of the coolest things one of the best texts I ever got is one of my lenders is into cars, and he sent me a picture of an old school '94 Acura NSX. He was like, "Thanks to you, I'm on my way to get my dream car." And I was like, "Hell yeah, that's cool right there." And it was really cool. And so now I've been with him probably 7 years roughly. I can send him a text and say, "Hey, I got this property and this much money," and he'll say, "Done, win." And it's super easy.
Yeah, absolutely. When you take care of your investors, that is how easy it is. And many people ask me, well, how do you find private money? You gotta, it takes time, and you gotta
Mhm.
perform, and
Yeah.
you gotta fall on the sword. If shit goes bad, you protect your investors at all costs, because if you don't, not only are they going to disappear, but word spreads like wildfire.
Yeah.
And what made me sad with what you just said is you called it an old school '94 Acura, and I graduated in '94, and I'm thinking, shit, that's not old school.
Well, I mean, I like the '94 Supras as well. And to me, I guess I probably shouldn't have said it that way, but I was born in '86, so I'm a little
I
bit
got
younger,
10
I
years
guess.
on you,
Yeah.
but no, well, you got some pretty cool other stuff going on too besides real estate. I know you and your wife, you're passionate about giving back, and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so one of the main reason everybody gets in real estate is freedom, money, right? When you Google how you make money in this world, inevitably real estate comes up. So we got in the real estate to have a little bit of time and freedom, and so we do a lot of traveling. In 2018, I was at a real estate event in, I think, Mississippi. I ended up in a gym working out with a buddy, who introduced me to another guy who rides dirt bikes. And I was like, shoot, hell yeah, he goes to the gym, he rides dirt bikes. That's my kind of guy. Nowadays he's a lender, but we've traveled the world riding dirt bikes. In that conversation in the gym, he said, "Hey, random, I met a guy on the internet. He runs an orphanage in Peru. To raise money for the orphanage, he rides dirt bikes around Peru for 2 weeks. Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Say less, duh." And so a few months later, we're in Peru riding dirt bikes, riding over the Andes Mountains, 16,000 feet, watching volcanoes, seeing the Andean condors. And when I got back home, I was like, man, not only did I get to experience another culture, another country, ride dirt bikes, hang out with my homies, but we got to send for every guy that rode, their participation fee got one impoverished or sexually abused girl through another year of high school or middle school or elementary, whatever grade they're in. And so I was like, dude, that is perfect. I want more of that feeling. And so it happened to be at the time on my Facebook, a friend of mine was posting about going to Nigeria and helping with orphans there. And I told my wife, I was like, I don't know this guy, but if by happenstance he ever messages me and says, "Hey, do you want to go to Nigeria? I'm letting you know right now. I don't care how scared you are or how scared I am. I'm going."
Mhm.
And so I don't remember the time frames, but he um he ended up eventually messaging me, and we went to Nigeria in 2019. And since then we've been back a handful of times. And when I got back the first time, I felt like I didn't want to wait until the next year to help people. And so we had met a really good dude there. We spoke to a lot of people, and I guess vetted him in some form or fashion. And I reached out to him. I was like, "Hey man, great meeting you. Um, here's my idea. I want to dig wells in Nigeria. How crazy is this?" And so to me, like us being in the US, we're thinking digging wells, it's 10,000, 30,000, $100,000 to dig a well. And so it seemed like a bit of a stretch, but I was like, "Hey, just give me some numbers." And he got back to me. He's like, "Dude, we can dig a well in this community here for $550." And I said, "Huh? Can hold on, is that number right?" And I think so their dollar is called naira, or um and so I was like, I googled the conversion of naira to dollar, and I was like, "That's $500. Is that right?" And he was like, "Can you confirm these numbers?" And he confirmed it. And then I confirmed it with my friends that have invited me to Nigeria. I was like, "Does this sound right?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's pretty standard there." I was like, "Dude, okay, game over." So within 6 months, we created a 501c3 nonprofit. and we started digging wells in Nigeria. The first one was pretty basic. We provided I think at the time it might have added up to somewhere around $800. And within a few weeks, we had a well in Nigeria. I was like, dude, this is the best feeling, because he would take pictures and film all the locals dancing and singing.
Mhm.
And then you can't see it, but on my wall, there's a lot of different communities there, and the community leaders sent me a letter, and I was like, God, this is like, it's just right up in my feels. And so now we do a couple wells a quarter, and on every well dedication, we will um, provide medical aid to everybody in the community. So we'll bring out volunteer nurses, provide prescriptions, and we'll feed every single family in the community as well. We'll give them a certain amount of food, rice,
Mhm.
beans, and whatever. So that's what we do with Operation Freedom is we dig wells in Nigeria, and every once in a while our people in Peru will reach out for some funding concerns, and we'll help fund those things. And so yeah, we just my wife's has two jobs within our company: bookkeeping, she's our accountant, and making sure Operation Freedom continues to grow. So she's got a monthly newsletter, we got a Facebook page, we're always posting stuff. And so that's one of our biggest goals is when we retire, we're going to move to either Nigeria or Peru for 6 months out of the year and really push the wells and get some orphanages and schools going.
Well, it's crazy to think about the cost that we would pay for an airline ticket to get to Nigeria would put in a couple wells,
Yeah, exactly.
you know. Like that's amazing. And great for you guys. I mean, that is having a passion project helps you build your business even more. I've
Yeah.
seen this many years, and 20 plus years in this business. I've seen people come and go, and the ones that come in because they want to make all this money, they fade very quickly because this business is simple, but it's not easy. And when you have a passion project, and when the your back's against the wall and deals aren't necessarily flowing the way you want, or you're having challenges, having that passion project is what pushes you through. And so I definitely appreciate what you're doing, and wanted to make sure that you had a platform to talk about that a little bit.
I
um
appreciate that a lot. Yeah.
and kind of probably winding down here,
Mhm.
I know that you're really good at navigating the software industry, right? As far as as a real estate investor, it's not something that I'm good at by any means. I got to pay people for that. What does that look like in your world?
Yeah, so I'm like the very definition of a squirrel, per se, or shiny object syndrome.
Hmm.
I'm always looking for something to do. I get bored very easy. So like if me and a buddy go on vacation, he's like, let's just chill by the pool. I'm like, no, dude, I'm gonna go walk the beach, or I'm gonna go rent a kayak or a jet ski or something. I just can't sit still. So I'm always looking for things to do. So a buddy of mine 2, 3 years ago, we're like, let's buy businesses. Let's go do that. Because we were looking for other forms of not only income, but we were looking at businesses that provided passive income. They were self-sustained, and the owners weren't in the day-to-day operations anymore. He ended up buying a restaurant. He loves it, but it wasn't for me. I don't want a bunch of I'll be nice. I didn't want to hire a bunch of non-skilled employees, right? I didn't want that burden. We almost bought a coffee shop, and I was like, man, I just, me and my wife molded over, and we built on a coffee shop. We built on a boba tea shop, and it just didn't fit what our long-term goals, what we had envisioned for ourselves. And so, again, I'm showing out another real estate investor networking event, and this software broker comes up to me, and we just get to chatting. And I told him how I wanted to buy a business. He was like, "You ever thought about buying a software company?" I was like, "No, I'm a real estate dude. I don't know anything about software or marketing or any of that stuff." But long story short, obviously, I bought the company. We evaluated, did our due diligence, and not only did I determine that the software company was an easier business for me to step into and be and back to the freedom context, gave me location freedom. Wasn't stuck to a coffee shop in this town. But it's easier to scale. And so versus, marketing for a coffee company, you've got to put on TV ads, billboards, mailers, all these things, and hope that somebody comes in. With a software company, it's a lot easier to market. So we bought a company called Deal Manager Pro. So real estate CRM, real estate investor CRM, where just like any other CRM, you manage your leads. But we stand out in a little bit that we provide nationwide comps for free. We have a direct mail integration. We have skip tracing integrations. Um, the list goes on. We're currently working with texting automations to set up your follow-up campaigns to where, because for me, some of my biggest deals have been from years and years of follow-up, and that's where a lot of people lose their deals. And so we wanted to eliminate that burden for our users by having the ability to set up those automations. So it'll text at a cadence that they set up. It will email, and we have an AI responder that is being built right now. So when those automated texts go out, you don't have to make sure you're online to jump onto that conversation real quick. The AI bot will respond back to that seller on your behalf and get that seller on board with make a move with you. And the list goes on. We are constantly integrating things. And so our main goal is to be kind of like a one-stop shop, but cheaper than everybody else, because other CRMs of similar comparison are 250, 350, $600 a month. And our main goal is, once you're in the system at X dollar amount, is to never raise that price on you, no matter what type of integrations we push into the system. And so anyways, you can see that I'm passionate about it. I didn't know anything about software before,
Yeah.
but now we run two developer teams pushing these implementations every single week.
Yeah, I personally know 3 other software owners of, and I won't throw the names out there, but they're, the larger CRMs, and it's a lot of work, man. Like those of us that are paying 100, 200, 300, whatever we're paying for our CRMs, like it's a nonstop battle for you guys to stay compliant, keep on top of everything. Like I hand it to you because my friends have told me, and I'm like, damn, man, that's a lot. But
Yeah.
I just like getting the end product and knowing that I can have the easy button to push, and I
Right.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
So you said that's Deal Manager Pro, and we can have a link to that in our
Sure.
show notes as well, dealmanagerpro.com. And man, I really appreciate the conversation and you coming on the show. As we kind of wind this up, I'm going to ask you something I ask almost all of my guests. What is one question I should have asked you today that I didn't? And it can be about anything.
Before you asked that, I was thinking about things I didn't mention, so I guess I'll just bring that up. Um, as I was developing and fixing and upgrading the software company, I was like, well, how do I get the company out there more without paying for a bunch of ads? And so I was like, I know real estate. Why don't I just teach people how to do real estate for free? And so I've got a free real estate wholesaling course that's coming out. I will go through A to Z on how to create a wholesaling business in 3 to 4 hours. So that's coming out soon. So you just have to find my Facebook, and I'll let you know when I launch it. It should be here in the next couple of weeks. And then I am done writing a land investing book, and I've just got to get it published. So I will likely do 2 types of advertisements. I'll get the book out for free like everybody else, and you just pay shipping, blah, blah, blah. There'll be an ebook, and of course it'll be on Amazon for purchase. But and that's not a fault of yours for not asking me. That's just from me not bringing it up. I should have brought it up. But I think you answer or asked me all the questions. I super appreciate you allowing me to talk about Operation Freedom. That's the main reason we do all of this. But at this point, we've served. So one of our things right now with our guy on the ground is we need community demographics. So we want how many people we're serving, how many people we're feeding, how many people we provide medical aid to. And so just a rough guesstimate, we've served already tens of thousands of families. somewhere in the 30 to 40,000 range. So yeah, we're partnering with another company called Bucket Ministry. So we're going to provide continual help to these communities afterwards. Um, Sorry, I'm just rambling about Operation Freedom now because we just got back from Nigeria in November. But one of the cool things is the first um, 6 or 7 wells we never got to see. And so in my mind, I'm like, shoot, if I'm a potential donor and I'm just giving money to these dudes I met on Facebook, or dudes, me and my wife, so this couple on Facebook to go dig wells in Nigeria, cool. But how do I know they're putting money where they say they're putting money? And so I made a very adamant point before we went out there. I was like, I need to go see my wells. Bring me to my wells. And so now if you go to our Operation Freedom Facebook page, you can see me and my wife. We go out to the wells, we test the water, we meet the community members, we shake hands with the leaders. And it was just like the coolest freaking experience ever. And so we start a new well soon, and we're heading back out in November again to go check up on more wells. And it's just it's one of my more favorite things to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, and for reference, because we're recording this on, at the end of April. So when you hear this show, go check out Brandon and find him, because everything he just talked about may likely have already been released.
Yeah.
Because we do record, a few weeks ahead. So I don't usually mention that on the shows, but it's not like it's a big secret. But that way, yeah, don't hesitate. If it's something that you want to go check out and see what Brandon and his wife are doing, like, just look it up. So,
Yeah.
well, man, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you sharing everything. The Generations of Wealth platform is not just about investing. It's our mantra is live your vision, love your life. And you guys are living your vision the way it sounds. And that's why I really just love having guests like you on my show.
Yeah. And I appreciate you inviting me.
Absolutely. So for everybody else, thank you again for following us and doing everything that you can do to help us grow the Generations of Wealth show and get our message out. And until the next one, go out there, make some deals, live your vision, love your life. See ya.